Hello, everyone. My name is Dean Singleton, Dean of the Lubin School of Business. I'd like to welcome you to this Dean's Roundtable. I'm really pleased to have with us a very special guest today, Mr. Christopher Roker, who serves as the Chief Executive Officer at New York City Health and Hospitals Lincoln, part of the largest public healthcare system in the nation, which provides essential services to 1.2 million New Yorkers every year. He holds an executive MBA from Pace University and graduated in 2007. Over the past few months, Mr. Roker has led the city's response to COVID-19, increasing the hospital's capacity to meet the surge in critically ill patients. He's an operational expert focused on building, growing, and improving the profitability, performance, and value in organizations with a leadership style that focuses teamwork and motivates his staff. Please welcome Mr. Christopher Roker.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Folks, I just wanted to say thank you to the Dean, to Gary for setting this up, and thank you for all of you to join me. I will talk a little bit about what I've done throughout my career and the connection to Pace University, Lubin's Business School, and the Executive MBA program, right? And then you guys can jump in, ask any questions, and I just can't wait. So let's get to it. So basically, I started my healthcare career in 1993. I think it was roughly around February of 1993. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I got out of school. It was the middle of, or actually ending the recession back then, and couldn't find a job. I worked a couple of off jobs, some oddball jobs, and then finally got an opportunity at Jacoby Medical Center as a healthcare investigator. It was probably one of my, though it was my first true job out of college, it wasn't my first job, but it was a real interesting job, right? Basically, I went to the bedside, either through the ED or inpatient, and really investigated and spoke to the patient, to their family members, depending on how sick they were, and trying to get their information so that we can start the billing process, as well as if they didn't have insurance, then to start the process of trying to get them Medicaid. And that really started my career at how I communicated with people, how I interacted with folks, not just patients, but also the doctors, the nurses, social workers. And I loved it. Got promoted within 6 months. I was joking around before. I didn't know if it was a promotion or they really didn't like me, because I got promoted to the behavioral health unit of the hospital. Did it very well, made a lot of money for the hospital. And at that time, it wasn't the COO. His name was Chris Fugazi. He was the associate executive director, and wanted to put me upstairs in the operating rooms to oversee the operations there. At first, I didn't know about it, but then I got excited, went there. I was the administrator for materials management and the operating rooms. Learned a tremendous amount of information about how a hospital runs. If anybody knows about healthcare, perioperative services, surgical services is almost like a mini hospital in itself. So at a very young age, I was responsible for not only the materials, the scheduling, all the equipment that came through the doors, making sure that people get from the ED or the inpatient. So I had to deal with transportation, making sure that we got the labs, making sure that radiology was appropriate and actually in the operating room. So it was a microcosm of really being a mini CEO of a hospital. So I did that for another, 3 years. And then during that time, my J&J rep actually kept on talking to me about, man, you would be a really good sales rep, Chris. You know how to talk to the doctors and the nurses. And so that side of the business, you would be great to sell product to the operating room. I said, no, I want to be an administrator. I want to eventually be a CEO. So I'm going to stay. kept on doing it. Then his boss came out. He said the same thing. He says, you know, you have to interview with Bert. Bert was the regional guy for all of New York, all of New Jersey, and Connecticut. So they set up the interview. I went down to Somerville, New Jersey. I remember it like it was yesterday. He must have asked me maybe 3 questions relative to the job. And then everything else was related to either my parents, my sisters, and what I wanted to do, what I like to do, you know, in terms of sports. And I didn't realize then, but I know now, you know, he was talking to me to see how I interacted with my parents, with my loved ones, with my friends, what were my interests. And after that whole interview, which it didn't feel like an interview, I'll be honest with you. He goes, okay, so when can you start? It's like, when can I start? I got the job. He goes, absolutely. I said, maybe three months. He has 3 months, 3 weeks. So 3 weeks, I gave my notice, and I was a sales rep for 4 years with J&J Ethicon. Loved it. No big deal. I loved selling the product. The product sold itself. I built relationships. That was the key. And the reason why I say that was the key, in my position right now, that's what it's really about. It's about building relationships, communicating with my doctors, my nurses, my frontline staff. So what I learned in my younger years, I use still today. And it's so important. And what I will say is, for the younger generation, these, great, but put them down. Learn how to talk and communicate with each other, because out in the real world, this, yeah, you're going to use it. But if you put it down, you won't lose this, the communication part. And that's very, very vital. So back to my career, and I'm going to jump ahead. Did that for 4 years, decided to go back into administration, linked up with some friends that owned a multi-specialty practice. And then eventually they tried to buy a hospital in Queens. It didn't work out. But during that time, in 2005, that's when I started my career, my degree with PACE. And the reason why I wanted to go back and get my MBA, I knew what I wanted to do eventually. I knew that I wanted to be a CEO. And if I didn't have an MBA or MPH or some kind of advanced degree, I knew that it was going to be much harder to get to that level, right? Now, I always thought that it was just the 3 letters behind your name that they cared about. I didn't understand or connect the dots, how important the MBA was. Not just for the MBA, but also for the interaction that took place between not only my professors, as you can see, the connections that we had, and also the students that were a part of my class, which I still keep in touch with. You bounce off ideas, you're able to communicate, and they were a part of your cohort, right? So they were going through the same things that you were going through. And it's almost like a pledge process, a soft pledge process. Though in the executive MBA program, they say that you're done in 18 months, which you are, or 22 months. The funny thing about it is that you're on Blackboard, you're on conference calls, you're usually staying up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, finishing up reports or any kind of data. But it was fun. It was challenging. It was something that I truly enjoyed. I remember Zico, myself, and Dino, we were doing our project, right? And we were on the phone until 3 o'clock in the morning. We're yelling and screaming at each other. Then we said, okay, Friday, how about Friday night? No, Saturday night, we're gonna meet up down at PACE, and we're gonna go through the project, go through the presentation. And I mean, we used to have arguments and we would laugh and then we would go out for dinner. And I just remember the good times. I mean, you learned so much, but you built such great relationships through this program. And I have to tell you, Pace University down there, New York City, it's just a different vibe. We would come in on a Friday, do our presentations on a Saturday, kind of relax, do our test, and then Sunday you get your new project, and you're excited. They held out to tell you what the project was until the last minute, and it was just like, come on, give me a break. But we all loved it. It was just phenomenal. So I have nothing but great things to say about Pace University and Lubin Business School and the EMBA program that I went through. And I'm pretty sure that all of my classmates would say the same thing. Everyone has really done very, very well after their MBA. So I think they would definitely say the same thing. And why don't we do this? Why don't we open it up for questions, and that way I can answer anybody's questions and we have some good time.
Ileana, how do you want to manage that?
Students, you are more than welcome to unmute and ask yourselves. You can raise the hand icon, or you can send me your questions via the chat. We've got options.
Anna's already up. Look.
Yeah, I have a question about how you mentioned that in your interview, it was more focused on your interests and your relationships with the people around you. So I'm wondering, you sound like a very personable person. So I'm wondering what advice you have for students when it comes to thinking about those soft skills rather than the hard skills that they learn in school. And maybe if you have any tips about how to let those shine through in interviews, and a harder part of the question, on their resumes. How can they make that known?
Yeah, great question. I think you have to be authentic, right? You can't be a robot. You have to let your personality shine. You just have to be natural, right? And I'm gonna suggest a lot of interviews. You guys need to go on a lot of interviews. And I mentor a lot of people, and I say this: if you think that you're gonna send out 10 resumes a week and expect to get one interview, you're crazy. Okay. You need to send out multiple resumes, right? Especially when you first come out. And interview on things that you just would not expect that you would be interested in, because it teaches you what are the finer points of one, how does your body language look, right? So if I'm interviewing you and I'm sitting at the table and I'm back, I'm relaxed. You should be still kind of sitting up, but not to the edge of your seat. You should reflect. It's almost mirroring, right? And you have to understand how to look at body language. You have to understand the reflections in one's voice and how they're speaking, right? And you have to be not bubbly. You don't have to do that. What you have to do is you have to be comfortable and confident in what you're talking about. You have to know how it relates to what the question is, right? And then you have to also relate it to the bigger picture. So you have to think about, it's almost like you have to be a strategist. You have to predict the questions that might come out of that person's mouth, right? And you have to predict that. You also have to understand that interviewers sometimes use different questions that are so far out that it kind of throws you off balance. And you have to be able to think on your feet, because that's what they want you to do. They want to see, can you think on your feet other than these typical scripted questions? Okay, and then they throw you a couple of curveballs to see how you're going to react. Are you going to answer the question? Are you going to fluff it? And they'll know, right? They will know. The only reason why I say this is because I've been on so many interviews, but I've also had so many interviews, and I'm the interviewer. So I throw curveballs to see how people react and think, and are they thoughtful enough to say, you know what, can you explain that question? Or I really don't know. How honest are people, right? And so I would just say that you need to show the same energy that the interviewer is giving you, right? Or a little bit more, because some interviewers are just they're very stark, right? They're just very cookie cutter. Sometimes because if it's an interview for a entry level, they have hundreds of resumes, or 50 or 100, and they have to get through those interviews. And so they're looking for that shining star that pops out at them, not just based on the resume itself. Now, talking about a resume, you really want a resume that actually shows some accomplishments, right? So if you did an internship at a Fortune 500 company, or a company that is in New York City, okay, what was your job, right? What was the internship about? And what did you accomplish for that job? And you have to be very specific in telling the accomplishments, right? You kind of have to tell a mini story in a few words. You can't be wordy. It has to be very poignant, and people usually like to see numbers, percentages. Did it go up or did it go down? You know, how much did it go up? How much did it go down? And that's pretty impressive, right? And so it kind of then strikes up the conversation for the interviewer to say, oh, talk to me, tell me about, you know, you say that you were able to reduce X by 15%. Well, how did you do that? And then you can actually then that's where you shine. That's where the energy comes from. That's where, you know, your confidence comes from. And that's what they're looking for. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
No problem.
I do have a question in the chat. What made you choose PACE for your MBA?
Great question. So there was NYU, there was Columbia, there was others, but Baruch. And I literally did my homework. First and foremost, I was not going to pay $110,000 for NYU and Columbia, right? And when you looked at their rankings, yeah, sure, that's fine. Great for finance, but I always knew that I wanted to stay within healthcare. Baruch was good for healthcare as well. But the flexibility of the MBA program, also the cost of it all made sense. The value was unbelievable. And then also I wanted to go down and really take a look at how they ran the program. So they invited me down. I sat in one of the sessions, and they sold me on that. That literally sold me. And then I went through the interview process, and that was a little nerve-wracking at first, but you know, it was good. It was great. I loved it.
Another question. I would assume you have built a network of people over time in your career. What advice would you give in terms of starting to build your network as a student?
So I would probably say you build your network of mentorship through mentors first, right? So over my career, I have had, and still have, about 6 mentors. And the 6 mentors serve the purpose of the different questions or problems or avenues of success that I have, right? So Chris Fagazi still my mentor from Jacoby. Kevin Wynn, my mentor. Michael Robinson, who was in Cycle 1, my mentor. Debbie Viscoso, she's my mentor. She's actually a CEO over at, God, I can't remember the hospital. They just changed their name in New Jersey. And she was my mentor at Beth Israel Hospital. So it's really important to start your mentorship first. Then as you do your internships and as you grow up the ladder, you will get you will start to build that network of folks. Now, of course, if you have mom and dad, they're in the industry, whatever industry that you might be interested in, you start utilizing their networks, right? And that's how you really start it. But I really believe in doing mentorships first. And as you build your mentorships, those relationships and networks that your mentors have, they start to refer you to people. And that's how you'll build it.
Let me jump in here and ask you a question if I could. I know early in your career, you were a healthcare investigator, whatever that means, and even in the operating room, whatever that means. How much did that influence your choice of career and leading you to be the CEO you are today?
Yeah, I think the HCI kept me grounded in the finance piece of it, right? I think the operating rooms kept me operational, as well as interested in the anatomy, right? Whenever I had a moment to go into an operation, I would go in, all types of operations, right? I was just fascinated by it. My father always wondered why I didn't become a doctor. I said, because it's not really worth it, Dad. He goes, what? I said, nah, too much schoolwork, doesn't really pay off in the long run. I have flexibility. That's what I loved. So I think each one of my jobs, right? So healthcare investigator, perioperative services, sales rep, administrator for multi-specialty practice, primary care, all the way through, derm, urology, everything. Back into the hospital system at Beth Israel, built the perioperative services there, ran a multi-million-dollar operation. That operations was just the perioperative for Beth Israel was well over $275 million when I was 32 years old, right? So I had responsibilities of large amounts of money and budgetary responsibilities. So I think each step of my career built me up to prepare me to be a CEO. It wasn't clear cut. Who would think an HCI would become a CEO or even a perioperative administrator? You would never think that. I always had it in the back of my head that I could be a CEO, and always took the time. That's another thing that I want to talk to you guys about. You have to put your goals down in writing, not up in your head. And the reason why I say you have to put it in writing is if you don't put it in writing, you're not committed to yourself. You're not concentrating on yourself. You're not concentrating on the future. You're not being committed to yourself. And at that point, now I was married, I wasn't committed to my wife. And so put your goals, your professional and personal goals down in writing. It will come true. And the only reason why I say this, I wrote down every single ask. So when I got the job, I first said to God, I said, God, I just want to get my foot in the door. Literally 3 weeks later, got my foot in the door. I said, okay, God, I wrote it down. I want to stay at this job or in the hospital for 6 months to a year, and then I want to get a promotion. 6 months literally got a promotion. Great, got the promotion. Wrote down my next goal. Okay, I want to stay maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Once again, promotion, 6 months to the operating rooms. I said, okay, I want to stay for 3.5 to 4 years. 4 years, literally 4 years. Then I went to J&J. Each time I wrote down what I wanted. Within 6 months to a year, I got it. I just said, swear to you, I was in the shower about 4 months ago. I was in the shower thinking about different things, and I said, God, I want you to guide me to my next destination. It's got to be something bigger. Bigger hospital, right? So if you don't write it down, you pray on it, you write it down, I'm telling you, it comes to fruition. You have to work hard at it, but it will come.
I have another question in the chat. How would you define your leadership style? Has it changed over time or as you switched roles? And is there a particular style that you do not work well with?
So I've never changed my style. I've always been a servant leader throughout my career. Even as a healthcare investigator, I used to always help out my colleagues, right? A leadership style that I don't do good with. Authoritative, dictatorship, that kind of style. It goes against the grain. It goes against my morals, and it's not long lasting. You get short-term results, but it's nothing that is sustainable. When you're a servant leader, it is sustainable. People do things because they see you in the mix of things. They see you as what they would want to be, right? And so definitely a servant leader.
Over the past few months, you have led the Metropolitan's response to COVID-19. You've increased the hospital's capacity to meet the surge in critically ill patients. Can you tell us about how you navigated any difficult decisions that you made during that time?
Yeah, so COVID was it was really bad, right? It was a struggle. But as I was mentioning to the dean, COVID actually clarified things for us, right? As an emergency management, it was easy for our system to move and navigate. What was hard was the emotional toll that it took on our staff, right? Especially when some of our own staff passed away. So I think that was probably one of the worst times of my life, and very, very difficult to navigate because you had to deal with people's emotion, but also you had to deal with moving the needle very quick. And you had to think differently because the hospitals usually, under normal circumstances, do not move things very quickly because we're dealing with patients. I'm talking about literally utilizing peds for adults, utilizing behavioral health units and closing them down, and literally getting construction to run oxygen lines, using PACU and open spaces for recovering patients, bringing in the morgues, the portable morgues. I think that was the indicator. That was the indicator that we were dealing with something very, very serious. When you all saw the pictures of Bellevue, of Elmhurst, of all of our city hospitals with 18-wheelers, refrigerated trucks, where we had to store bodies. That took a toll on the psyche of our staff, especially the doctors, because the doctors, they've been trained that they have the answer, the medical answer. And if they didn't have it, somebody else would. And it was no answer for the first couple of months. We didn't have answers. We could not save patients. We tried everything. And when I say we tried everything, I mean, it was all hands on deck. We closed down ambulatory, and we had our attendings, our primary care attendings, taking care of patients in the ED. We had administrators, we had us CEOs, whatever we had to do, transporting bodies down or transporting bodies up. It was a different time. I don't think our healthcare system, any healthcare system, will ever experience this again. But with that being said, there were some positives. It taught us how to move the needle very quickly, how to make decisions, accurate decisions based on data to move the needle. And so, you guys don't know it, but health and hospitals, I would have to say it is probably about 5 years behind the times. We have almost every person here is unionized. Even the doctors are unionized, and it gives you a different mentality. And so it kind of, funny story, it kind of forces people to do things that they told us that couldn't be done, i.e. telemedicine. Our doctor said, hey, there is no way my patient nor me wants to do anything over a video. Nothing over a video. And we were like, holy mackerel, what's the problem here? Enter COVID. We need to utilize televisits to see our patients. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Wow. So COVID actually changed your mind. That is great. Thumbs up, gang. So there are some positive things that you have to take away from it. But there's also, there's going to be some long lasting scars to our industry. We lost a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors decided to retire out, and we have to prepare for that. As a matter of fact, today, I just had a meeting with my staff about nurses, and we have a shortage. We're going to have a shortage of nurses, and that's concerning to me in the ED, right? So we have a strategy that we put together today that we're going to implement tomorrow. And so hopefully that will work for the upcoming months. But these are some scary times ahead of us because of the resource challenges that we have. So it's just a learning experience. Also, as you guys are experiencing it too, basically, do we all need to be in one location? Can we work from home? Does it make sense? Some of our back office operations now, they will never come back to the hospital, right? And that's not a bad thing. I think it's actually a good thing. But you have to take a look, even though that's the good, the bad is that the city's going to suffer some way, some fashion, some form in terms of in terms of revenue through taxes, in terms of closing and keeping their doors closed of restaurants, of smaller businesses that relied on the foot traffic downtown, right? And so there's always the cause and effect, and we just have to be knowledgeable of that and acknowledge it, that it's never going to come back, not the way it used to be.
I have sort of a follow-up question, if that's okay. Chris,
Sure.
how do you motivate people in these kind of difficult times? How do you keep people going and wanting to work hard and liking their job and passionate about their work?
Yeah. So the good thing is that we're in the business of taking care of patients, right? And so that is a motivator in itself. And it's very important to acknowledge the success that people have had. It's important to acknowledge people, period, right? For, hey, thank you for taking care of that patient. Thank you for helping me. You know, it goes a long, long way. And being the CEO, it's very funny, right? Because I don't consider myself this special person. I put on my pants the same way. But the respect that I guess the office or the position holds is so, I'm a humble guy, and I just don't, I tell everybody at the hospital, do not call me Mr. Roker, call me Chris. I haven't deserved to be called Mr. Roker, nor am I an old guy, right? And so I want them to understand that we're all in it together, and there's no hierarchy, right? There is just me, my staff, and that's it. And they come first. So what I do is I usually show the upside down pyramid, and they're up at the top, the patients first, then the staff, then middle management, then my senior staff, then my executive staff, and then it's me at the bottom. They're the most important people. So I round every day. I check in with my staff. Today was check in with EVS. And so I said to them, you know, you have to understand how important your job and you guys are to the hospital. And that's probably the first time that, well, it was the first time that a CEO ever came down to their area, which is crazy. Because I like to be amongst the people, right? I'm a people person. So I said to them, I said, do you understand how important you guys are to the hospital? One, because of infection, you keep the infection rate very low by cleaning up, making sure that the rooms are clean. But also, you have a dual role. You're the ones who see the patients more often than anybody else because you're constantly going in their rooms. And so the way you talk to people, the way you talk to our patients are a direct reflection of how they're going to score us on our Press Ganey scores, right? Because they'll always remember a person who is very personable, that says good morning, that says when they're cleaning, they're finished cleaning, is there anything else that I can do for you? And they were all nodding their head. They were like, yeah. And I said, you know, you really keep our asses out of the press. And they were like, Mr. Roker, you cursed. I was like, I'm a human being, just like you. They go, and I said, why did you call me Mr. Roker? I asked you to call me Chris. They were like, oh, that's right, that's right. I said, oh, okay, take out your phones. They go, take out our phones. Is this a trick? I said, no, it's not a trick. I said, okay, I'm giving you my personal cell phone number so that if any time that you need to contact me, it's on 24/7. Call me. And they were just like, you're serious? I said, yes, very, very serious. So to me, it's so important that they have a direct connection to the CEO because they are the most important people in the hospital, right? So that's how you really motivate people, is to first talk to them on their level, reassure them, thank them, congratulate them, acknowledge them for the success of not only the hospital, maybe for their department, maybe for the unit. It really is not that hard to motivate people. You have to respect them, right? And respect what they do.
Thank you.
No problem.
Oh, go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay. You know, my question, and Chris, you talked about goals.
Yes.
What's your goal? Do you have anything written down right now? In terms
Yes,
of
actually, it's hold on 1 minute. I think. Oh, no, my other goals are at home. But yeah, so So my next step is stay here 2.5 to 4 years, get them up running right. And then my next goal is to either be an executive vice president, COO of a system, or CEO of the system, president and CEO of a system.
Great.
Yep.
Okay.
And then my personal goal, travel more. I have to travel more outside of the country. I haven't done that in 2 years.
Of course, help pace is in there too, right? Advisory board, board of trustees, something like that. I think you're working on the connection there.
That'll be May. That'll be May. Yeah.
Well, a follow-up question to your goals.
Yes.
It seems like you have executive goals and you also have your personal goals, and you're going to be very busy trying to accomplish both. What is your vision or approach to maintaining a work-life balance or a balance in general?
Don't take offense and don't get crazy about it, but there's never a balance when you want something really bad, right? Something will have to give. So I took this job. My boss calls me up. He asked me, "Hey, Chris, we really have a problem at Lincoln. Can you step in? Can you do it?" So I said, "Of course," right? But the give that I had to give up was, I was comfortable at Metropolitan. I could come in really at any time that I really wanted to. I structured it very well. My doctors, they were all in alignment. We knew where we were going. But here, I had to change that. I had to be here by 6 o'clock every day. And I usually don't leave until about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. My wife is independent, so that helps me, right? I don't have kids. But usually I hang out with my frat brothers. I go out for dinner, those are the things that you have to give up for a short period of time to get what you really want done. And eventually it'll get somewhat normal, but you have to give something to get something. I always say to my mentees and my staff, I said, just today, actually, because we're getting ready to go into our budget season. And so I said to all my chairs, I said, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And they all looked, they were like, what? I was like, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because this is going to be an uncomfortable couple of weeks while we get ready and we prepare for budgets. I'm going to be pushing you to do more. So you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm going to ask you some real personal questions, and you have to think about it. And the question is, do you want to be here because you want to be here? Or are you here because there's nowhere else that you can go? And that's a serious question, because most of them have been here for 20 years and up. Some of them have been here for 30 years on up. And the challenge is, can you think differently, right? Can you think differently? I'm not asking you to think outside the box. I'm asking you to think differently for the betterment of the organization and not the betterment of you. Because I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the hospital. Because there's a lot of things that we have to fix in this hospital to get it to where my expectation is. Also, it's to think audaciously, right? Think crazy, think just really, really crazy. And they were like, what? I was like, you guys said that you want to be the flagship of the system. And I'm not even thinking about the system. I'm thinking about being the best hospital, the best level 1 trauma center in the country. And it was silence in the room. And I was just like, yes, I got them. I got them thinking. And then, after a while, they were like, you know what? I think you're right. And now today, I started to have my budget meetings with each one of the chairs. And Chris, I thought about what you said yesterday, and you're absolutely right. We can attract really great residents and really great attendings. I said, yes, different way of thinking, right? So I think that's what it is.
So it sounds like you've always done really well achieving your goals, as you said, to write them down and kind of keep them as, your next step. And I'm wondering if when you've reached these next steps, if you've ever kind of taken a step back and realized that maybe this wasn't how you had pictured it, and how you kind of keep that to reframe it and keep yourself moving forward in order to figure out then what would be the proper next step in your career and how to keep it a positive experience.
Yeah. No, I've been on many interviews. So the interviews that I thought that I was gonna get, some of those were really disappointing, right? I mean, when I tell you, I came out of there with, man, I nailed that interview. And I'm just like, yes. And they call me back and I'm like, yes, I'm on round 3. Okay, all right. And then all of a sudden it's, well, Chris, you really did do a great job interviewing, but somebody else had some more experience than you. I'm like, geez. Okay. What could, and I always ask the interviewer, okay, what else can I have done or said that would have got me over the line? And some of it is, yeah, you could have done this, that, been clearer, been more concise. And some of it is, no, you really hit it out the ballpark. They really loved you, but somebody just squeaked through. And those are the times that you have to just say, it wasn't in the plan, right? I'm a big believer. I don't go to church a lot, but I believe that God's got my back. If I'm asking him something, it's not when I want it, it's when I deserve it. He thinks I deserve it, right? But you got to put the work in. And so, was Lincoln the thing that I would have wanted? Probably not. But I'm saying to myself, man, this is a great opportunity to turn around a level 1 trauma center that is probably one of the busiest EDs in the country. Boy, if I could turn this thing around, I'm writing my own check, right? And that's just the positive nature of how I think, right? I say good morning to people and they're like, oh, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great. They're like, you're doing great. I said, any day that I'm vertical, I'm great. And they're like, ooh, I didn't think about it that way. I said, yeah, we're in the industry that we need to think about that every day. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Okay, Mr. Roker. What? Okay, Chris. All right. Okay.
I do have another question in the chat. Where do you think the most innovative work in your field is happening in the US now?
That's a great question. I have to say, New York City, because of COVID, because we were the epicenter, I think this is where, if you want to be in healthcare, this is it. This is where tens, a lot of research is going to be done on us. Not just the clinical research, but the operational research of how did you go from 362 beds to almost 600 beds of use? How did you turn your boardrooms over to COVID treatment centers? How did you move peds and mother and baby out of 5C and 5D and 5B and create an ICU? How did you create 150 ICU beds over at NCB in literally 30 days? How did you maintain the operations of the decedents for morgue operations? There's a whole host of operational studies that will be done for at least 2, 3, 4 years on how we operationalize things. I have to tell you, I am so proud of the people that work here at New York City Health and Hospitals. I know that sometimes we get a bad rap because we're a public institution and we're, anything and everything that we do is public. But let me be honest with you, the Mount Sinai's of the world, the NYU's of the world, the Columbia's of the world, the NYP's of the world, they have horrific stories. You just don't hear it because they're private institutions and the public can't get their information. But it's a small world, right? I mean, our healthcare industry, everyone talks amongst each other. And so we know what happens at the other institutions, right? We just are one big public institution that anybody can ask for our records. So don't be surprised when you hear, once in a while, a Mount Sinai or NYU go through something. That's because their own people leak it. But we're on the stage, right? And so I'm just proud of what we have accomplished and what we're striving to do with the population that we have. It's not easy, it really isn't. But I love what I do. The people that are here, the doctors that are here, the nurses that are here, they're dedicated people, right? It's not like we make a whole lot of money. So you have to do it for the love. You have to do it for the teaching. You have to do it for the mentorship. Because to be honest, we can go other places and make a ton of money, but we choose to be in this. And people ask me all the time, Chris, you could go out to the Midwest, you could go out to the West, you could go down South, and I could make easily $1 million, $2 million doing what I'm doing right now. I choose to do it because honestly, I'm learning, I'm helping, I'm making a difference in my community. So I love what I'm doing. I'm blessed. I really am. I say it all the time. Blessed.
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Absolutely.
You are people person and the go-getter and full of energy. And in the institution, in the public institution, which is not that very structured, and people are not really go. So how your personality lead those people who just sit there and waiting for government paychecks?
Oh my goodness. What a great question. It's called expectation, right? It's called living by the values, right? And our values it's called I care. It's integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. And that's what I demand of my people because that's what I give. And if they're sitting on their tushes trying to wait for their 30-year pension, I tell them all, I don't fire people. People fire themselves, right? It doesn't matter if you're in the union or you're not in the union. To me, it has no bearing on how I discipline, right? And so I set an expectation. I expect that the people will do their jobs at 100%. And if they don't do their jobs, then we have a conversation. If they continue to do it, then we have a write-up. If they continue to do it, guess what? They get sent home. Then if they continue to do it, it's called an oath process, right? So they get disciplined, they get suspended, then they get fired. They have the option to go to oath, which is actually set forth upon the judge. And we give the judge all of the paperwork trail. And basically the judge makes the final decision. But in between that time, the prejudgment, sometimes we give an offer. The offer might be, hey, we'll pay you 3 months or we'll pay you a month. You just go. But after that, once the decision is made, if they decide to go with it, great. Then they sign a piece of paper. They can never work for the city of New York ever again. And or if the judge renders his or her decision in our favor, then guess what? They're fired. They can never work for the city of New York again. So either way, to me, all I'm asking a person to do is to do their job, do it respectfully, right? Take care of our patients. And if you can't do that, you're going to fire yourself.
Wow.
And everybody knows, I usually meet with all of the union reps, and I explain to them that it's only 1% of the population in our hospital that are the bad apples. I do not care about the bad apples. They will fire themselves. I care about the 99%. And they usually shrug their shoulders and they say, okay. And then, a couple of months later, they're in my office, Mr. Roker, what can we do? Can you work with me in my membership? And nope, I told you, the 1% will fire themselves. They're going to fire themselves.
But those unions are very powerful.
They're not
and they have, you have to go all 9 yards to go through that.
Yes, but that's okay. I mean, the beautiful thing is that with the unions, you have a book. Their book tells you and tells their membership what they have to do. Now, when I flip through the pages and I hit the page where it says disciplinary, and I say, hey, by the way, were you absent 3 times within 1 month? Yes, Mr. Roker. Oh, it does say it here, right? Yes. Okay. There's nothing the union could say to me. I'm a clean cut kind of guy. It is real simple. It's in black and white. I go by their union book. Like I said, I don't fire people. People fire themselves because you would have to do it continuously for a period of time. And if they're doing it continuously for a period of time, they're telling me they want to be fired. So fire yourself. I don't get angry about this stuff. So, I get a kick because it's really in black and white. Most of the people, they're great people. They want to do their job. They want to collect a pension, and God bless them. It's that 1%. I'm able to get them out. I haven't lost a grievance case yet in my whole entire career.
That's a great story. No question about that. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the last question. We've run out of time. Just when we're getting going. Yeah.
You can see why we love Chris and why we wanted to be sure not to miss this session, because he has so much energy and enthusiasm, and it's just such a joy, Chris, to see you.
Thank you. I love you guys.
You're great.
I really want to thank Chris for being with us today. As you can see, he's having a very successful career. He's a great guy. And he's an excellent example of the many successful alumni of the Lubin School of Business. We have a small gift, a small token of our appreciation for you being with us today. Unfortunately, I can't hand it to you through the Zoom, so it'll be on its way to you soon. But I really want to thank you for being here with us today. You were a great, great guest on the Dean's Roundtable. I want to thank all the students for being with us today, too.
You guys be safe out there, okay?
Thank you, Chris.
Listen, if you haven't gotten your vaccine, please get your vaccine.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks again, Chris. Everybody have a great day.
Chris. Talk soon.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
You're great. You're great.
Bye-bye.